Now by Tselane, former IEC Commissioner. He's also head of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. And also say a very good evening to Lawson Naidoo from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Mr. Tselane, I'm going to start with you. You pretty much called this one, if I recall correctly, when we spoke last. You said that the Constitutional Court would have no option but to dismiss this. Dismissing it, do you think because they're not the right place? It doesn't seem that way. It seems that they've really engaged with the concerns and have come up with a decision.
Of course, the Constitutional Court had responsibility to engage with all different opinions emerging on this particular aspect. But at the end of the day, I've always understood that given the context of the issues that we're dealing with, that the Constitutional Court was always going to come to a conclusion that the elections have got to take place within a constitutional stipulated period, and that's what the Constitutional Court has done.
Do you think it's a right decision, though, in terms of a poll that will be free and fair or not? Because there's real concerns that voters might not turn up because they're concerned about COVID infections, that smaller parties in particular might not be able to campaign effectively, and we've seen the mess with the registration list this week.
Well, here is a difficult, that the issue of COVID, it's a moving target in the sense that we don't know whether next month the numbers of people who are affected will be higher or not. And we don't know as to whether the people who will be dying as a result of COVID will be higher or not. So even if you postpone the elections now on the basis that there is COVID and that perhaps in February the situation will be a little bit better, we don't know. Because in February, the situation could be even worse. So the issue of context, which the Constitutional Court ruled on during the calm matter, it's basically a moving target when it comes to the issue of the COVID, because there is so much unknown about COVID. So you can't postpone the elections on the basis that COVID is going to be better in February than it is right now.
Lawson Naidoo, I want to bring you in here. Good evening to you. You've read through the decision made by the Constitutional Court. What do you make of it?
Well, good evening, Sally. Thanks. Look, I think the first point to note is that what we have from the Constitutional Court today is an order or its decision. We don't have a judgment. We don't have the reasoning of the Constitutional Court. But the order is very clear. It dismisses the IEC's application to delay the local government elections beyond the constitutionally permissible period, which is the 1st of November, that the election must take place before that date. And we hope that the court has come to that decision on very clear constitutional and legal grounds, and that the court has no authority to extend the time period for these elections to be held. That's quite clearly something that belongs in the domain of Parliament and not the courts, and we certainly hope that the judgment will confirm that when it is released. Having said that, and Terry's absolutely right, that we don't know how this pandemic is going to play out in the next couple of months, let alone what it might look like in February next year. So, you know, it's an uncertain terrain that we're operating in. And even Justice Moseneke's report received conflicting medical or scientific input. Some people who said that the safest period to hold an election would be in October because the level of transmission is likely to be low, and there's no guarantee that that same low level of transmission would be prevalent in February next year. So the scientific opinion is mixed, but this is a very clear judgment that the major defect that the court seems to have identified is the issue of a voter registration weekend, which they are seeking to make provision for if the IEC thinks that it's practical to do so. And that's a decision that has to be taken within 3 days of this court order. And if that's not possible, then the minister is directed to gazette a date for the election on the 10th of September or soon thereafter. And that date must be somewhere between the 27th of October and the 1st of November.
I have to just drill down a little into this. As you say, this is just the decision. We don't have the reasons. Are you saying that they could have dismissed it purely because they don't think they're the right forum, that actually this is a parliamentary decision to make?
Well, I certainly hope that that is the decision, Sally, because that, that's the argument that CASAC, which was an amicus in the case, put forward to the court very strongly, that we did not believe that the Constitutional Court was the right forum for this decision to be taken, that we've known about the pandemic for a long time. We've known that these issues could become a factor. And if that was the case, then the responsibility was on the Electoral Commission to have brought the matter before Parliament in good time for Parliament to make the necessary changes.
All right, let me bring Terry Tselane back in, because Terry, if I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what you were saying as well, that the Constitutional Court would rule that it's really not for them to decide. Do you think that that is exactly the reason why they've dismissed this?
It's probably the main reason why they would have dismissed it, because as I indicated previously, that the Commission is supposed to have gone to Parliament in order to get Parliament to amend Section 159.
So, Mr. Tselane, does that mean that the IEC still has the option of approaching Parliament, or is it completely moot because time is ticking on?
I think it is moot. They still have an option to go to Parliament, but I can assure you right now that I don't think that there is a possibility within the period that we have for the Commission to get any response that is positive to their request for the postponement of the elections before a constitutional stipulated period, which is the 1st of November. So the Constitutional Court has taken a decision that that determination must still be within a constitutional stipulated period, which is between now and the 1st of November. So the Commission doesn't really have much option but to make sure that the elections take place before the 1st of November.
Lawson Naidoo, I want to bring you back in here. So it seems that the option of going to Parliament, it's just too late to go to that step. I'm wondering if you agree with Terry Tselane, but also on a broader legal issue, whether, bearing in mind the concerns about whether this poll can be held in a free and fair manner, wouldn't that ambiguity perhaps open any result up to massive legal challenge by various political parties after the poll?
Okay, well, firstly, I mean, I think Terry's absolutely correct. I don't think there's sufficient time available for Parliament to process a constitutional amendment, which requires significant public participation and time. There are time frames set out for that, which is not possible between now and the 27th of October. Whether the election is going to be deemed to be free and fair is perhaps an opinion or a decision that can only be formed after the election has taken place. And it's conjecture to say that it won't be free and fair sitting where we do today. But we can go on the fact that we've held a number of by-elections during the pandemic, all of which have passed off reasonably well with no complaints from any of the political parties. We've seen elections being conducted in other parts of the world. Most recently, we had presidential elections in Zambia, just our neighbor, with a very high turnout, with no significant reports of COVID-related issues in that election, which was deemed to have been free and fair. So, it seems that there are no major hindrances to the IEC being able to conduct elections that are free, fair and credible, and the parties must adapt to the circumstances in which we're living. South Africans across the board, for the last 18 months, we've had to adapt to living under pandemic conditions, under various stages of lockdown, and we've managed to get on with our lives and to do what is necessary. And political parties must do exactly the same.
Terry Tselane, I want to bring you in to speak about your experience as a former vice chair at the IEC. You were so involved with the Independent Electoral Commission. Of course, you've never had to run an election during a pandemic. But just two questions really to you in terms of what the IEC is now going to have to do. Yes, they were preparing and going ahead nonetheless, but I would imagine that with COVID there's lots more to do now. So a little bit about the process that now needs to happen, and also whether you think this issue that the ANC withdrew, they went to the Electoral Court, then they withdrew an application to open up that registration again. Do you think that might now be back on the cards?
Well, the Electoral Commission has got absolutely no option but to comply with the Constitutional Court's judgment, which means that the elections have got to take place within a constitutionally stipulated period. Now, the fact that the Constitutional Court has actually allowed an aspect where the minister's declaration of the elections in terms of Section 24 of the Structures Act to declare the elections to be on the 27th of October has been declared invalid. And the fact that the Commission now has been given an opportunity to have an elections within a constitutional stipulated period, what it means is that the minister can redeclare the date of the elections, but that redeclaration of the date of the elections has got to happen before the 1st of November. And in that allows, and the fact that the IEC now has been given an opportunity for voter registration, it does allow political parties now to go to the IEC and say to the IEC, we have people that we had submitted. These people may not have registered. Now that the Constitutional Court has ruled on this matter, we can re-register these people in the wards or in the areas where they're supposed to be registered, and then therefore it opens that avenue for people who did not qualify to be part of this process.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and we'll leave it there. Thanks to both of you. Really insightful views on this decision by the Constitutional Court. Thank you very much, Terry Tselane, former IEC Commissioner. Of course, he runs a consultancy now on elections. And also thank you very much to Lawson Naidoo of CASAC.